There are 8 universities in the Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Conference who play an average of about 20 varsity sports each. Hi, I'm Jonathan Yates with the Culture of Sports. Thank you for joining us with another edition of Appetizer and Dinner with the Athletic Directors. I'm here with 2 of the finest from the WIAC who are going to introduce themselves and tell them about their schools. Crystal, you want to start first?
Yeah, my name is Crystal Lanning. I'm the athletic director at the University of Wisconsin River Falls. We're located in River Falls, Wisconsin, which is on the western part of the state, just outside of the Twin Cities. We have 17 varsity sports, about 400 student athletes, and enrollment is about 6,000 students.
I'm Kim Blum. I am the athletic director at the University of Wisconsin Lacrosse in Lacrosse, Wisconsin, on the western side of the state, a little further south than River Falls. We have about 10,000 students and 20 sports, soon to be 21 sports, and we have about 550 student athletes.
Wonderful. So we're fortunate to be filming at one of the top Culvers in the country here in Menominee Falls. They just won a contest, and therefore another one. But you're also very fortunate to be athletic directors in the WIAC. What are some of the advantages to being an athletic director in the WIAC, Crystal?
I think the WIAC is known throughout the country as one of the best conferences for Division III. So it's, I feel very fortunate to be part of that league. It's a very historic league, over 100 years old, and I really enjoy that piece. I think that competitiveness, day in and day out, our teams are going to be competing against the best. And I think our student athletes and our coaches thrive off of that. I also enjoy the fact that we're all public universities within the same state. I think that's really a unique feature to our conference, and really enjoy that aspect.
And so how do you use that in recruiting?
Well, I think some of the recruiting advantages for River Falls, we're real close to the Twin Cities area, and a lot of our schools that we're competing against for recruits are Division II or private institutions. I think the affordability of our tuition is a real strong suit for us. At River Falls, we just went through a $63 million facility renovation and construction. So for us, utilizing that to our advantage is really important. And I think when it comes down to recruiting, our coaches try and stress the value, the competition, and I think those are all really strong pieces to their recruiting puzzle.
And what do you see the advantages to working with WIAC?
Well, I agree with Crystal very much in the cohesiveness of the types of institutions that we all are. We face a lot of the same kinds of concerns a lot of times, and advantages, of course. When you ask about recruiting, I think with staffing in particular, a coach who has the ability to coach in this league is very attractive, and certainly a recruiting advantage, I believe, in that way. And I also agree with Crystal in terms of student athletes coming into this conference. They understand the level of competition. They understand how that prepares them for postseason, because they're competing against some of the best colleges nationally, really on a day in and day out basis.
And so how do you use those advantages in recruiting coaches, staffers, and student athletes?
Well, I think just talking about those same things. This is what we are. This is how this will prepare you. Here is what you can be a part of, and that is very, very attractive to a lot of groups of people.
Now, when I interviewed Derek Carter, he's the athletic director at Coppin State in Maryland, he said he was very proud when the bigger schools would hire away his top administrators and his top coaches. How do you guys feel when somebody leaves you for a D1 school or a Power 5 school? Kim?
Well, we of course always wish our staff the best, but I'm certainly of the opinion that UW-Lacrosse is the best place to be, and Division I has a lot of allure. I understand that, but I'm very much of the opinion that Division III is the place to be, and so very, very happy for anyone who makes those choices. But I know that we have the ability to not only attract coaches that we just talked about, but to retain them because of the type of institution that we are academically, because of the type of student athlete that we can attract, and this league, of course.
Do you see a lot of transfers coming from D1 programs?
We have, I think, I would presume, a normal amount of transfers, differing sport to sport, certainly, but I don't think it's probably I guess I don't know what the ratio is in terms of our institutions versus other institutions, but yes, we certainly have that.
So Crystal, when someone leaves your program for Division I or Power 5, what are your feelings?
Well, I think it's part of the business, and I agree with Kim. It's all about finding the right fit. I don't know if we necessarily see someone leaving River Falls to go to a Power 5 school, but maybe they're taking a step to another place, and maybe that's an ultimate goal. And I think my job as an athletic director and our administrative team is to help support coaches and our student athletes the best that they can, and if that's developing them to go on to what they feel is a better fit, then we're going to support them along the way. But I agree with Kim, it's all about finding the right fit, and I'm a strong believer in the Division III philosophy, and I think we're looking to recruit people that also believe in that philosophy.
So how would you state the Division III philosophy when you're out recruiting a coach, administrator, or student athlete?
I think the Division III philosophy for me is all about the balance. We want our student athletes to also be students, be involved in campus, be fully integrated into the campus experience, and I think the Division III model does a good job of lining that up. There's clear in-season, out-of-season, and what we can and can't do in those periods, and it definitely builds in a downtime for most of our student athletes where they have time to focus on other interests, and we encourage them along the way to get involved with different clubs and organizations, make sure that they're focusing on their academics. We place a strong emphasis on academic achievement, so I think that's where I see the Division III philosophy. It's really about the balance between academics, athletics, and social success.
So Kim, you've got a great program at Lacrosse, so what do you think is the Division III philosophy?
I agree with Crystal again, and I listen to what our student athletes say about their experience, and they're very motivated in the classroom, just in the same way that they are in their sport, and so they want to spend their time being able to devote to their classroom experience as well, and they are involved in many different things outside of the classroom and outside of their sport. They're in clubs and so on and so forth, and many of them are having jobs, and so there's a lot of ways that they're split, and I think that is a good thing versus just one path, one direction. I really like the diversity that the experience brings here.
Do you think they appreciate that, maybe if they had gone to that Power 5 program, they wouldn't have the opportunities they do at the WIAC?
I think that they do appreciate that. I think that any young person certainly sees the allure of some of the sparkly things that happen at Division I, but I think when they really get down to evaluating what their experience means, I think that they do appreciate that, and I think that appreciation might come later in life as they move away from being in the moment, so to speak, and can reflect on that later.
So Chris, last month I was up at the University of Massachusetts interviewing athletic directors from schools in New England, and one thing we talked about was how difficult it was to compete for attention when you've got the Boston Red Sox and the New England Patriots. Well, they've got it easy. I mean, you've got the Vikings, the Twins, the Bears, the Cubs, the Lions, the Tigers, all the hockey teams. So how does it, you get that community spirit and all the attention behind it that makes your program so great?
Well, I think that's one of the advantages of the locations of our schools, that most of them are in smaller towns and there is a tremendous community support. I think the distractions or the other priorities are just part of the business. You have family obligations. Youth sports is a huge thing that we battle against as far as getting people.
So the Packers are just a minor player in Wisconsin?
Well, and I think they're just always, that's part of the mix. And I think it's okay to have a balance of interests. And I don't know that there necessarily has to be an all or nothing. I think there can be a nice balance. You can support the Packers or the Vikings and also the River Falls Falcons.
You can't support the Packers and the Vikings at the same time. That I have.
Well, we're a border town. You'd be surprised the mixed families that we have.
How about in your way? How do you find it, working against, the Vikings, the Packers, the Lions to bring the attention to your program?
Well, I think that, we certainly bump up against one another on occasion. Some Saturdays when there's a Badger game on, a Badger football game on, at the same time that we're hosting a home football game, we think, oh, okay, we're going to lose a few. And we know that, but I again agree with Crystal in that we have a very strong community in terms of youth sports, and that's probably, I don't want to call it a battle because it's not at all a battle, but that where people have other opportunities to go see things. So how can we figure out what our niche is and get people interested in what it is we're doing? certainly, the hometown student athlete, that kind of thing absolutely helps bring attention.
In my view, that's where you have it a lot tougher than the New England athletics directors. Yes, they have the Patriots and the Red Sox, but they don't have the Big Ten and the Big 12 to compete against as you guys do. What is that like going up against the University of Wisconsin, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Iowa State, both Big Ten and Big 12 going directly for the talent you guys need for your programs?
I think it comes down to, if we're talking about the student athletes coming to our institutions, I think it's all about our coaches knowing what the right fit is for prospective student athletes, and they talk about that a lot during the recruiting process. What Kim mentioned, prospective student athletes may be allured by the attraction of Division I, but that's part of the conversation. Is Division III a good fit for you? Is our program a good fit for you? And yes, we may lose some to a Division I or a Division II, but ultimately, I find our coaches do a really nice job of maintaining those relationships, and if they take a first step at a Division I or a Division II, they'll find out maybe that's not the best fit, but they had a great recruiting experience with our staff, and they may come and transfer in second or third year. And we have found some of that where student athletes pick a Division I or Division II for the first year, find out it's not a good fit, but they had a great experience, they had a good relationship with our coaches, and they end up coming to River Falls as a transfer.
So, we spent a lot of time talking about your institutions. Let's start talking about you two as individuals now. What was it that made you decide to go into become an athletic director?
Well, I don't know that I set out to be an athletic director coming out of high school. I wanted to be a high ed teacher, and I got to campus. And during my very first semester, I went down an entirely different path and went more of the recreation route. Graduated, worked at Marquette University for a couple years in the recreational field, but then I went back. I started coaching during that time, and then I went back to grad school in sport administration, and that's kind of where my focus absolutely switched to more of an absolute athletic focus instead, and it started with coaching for me. From there, went to Illinois State, was the track coach there for 7 years, and loved every bit of that, but my family obligations were a little tougher during that time, and so then switched more into administration, and even at that time, being an assistant athletic director at Lacrosse, wasn't necessarily thinking about the athletic director, but each step you make, you think, okay, well, a new challenge, new exciting things, and so it really for me was much more of a process of what I was doing.
So it's sort of a gradual process, not a light bulb
It
moment?
wasn't I'm going to be this, years and years and years. It just was based on what I was doing at the time and the evolution of that.
So, Kristen, how was your process going to college sports administration?
Yeah, I also had maybe a non-traditional path to an athletic director role. My educational background and early career was all in athletic training, so definitely a support staff member, supporting all of our coaches and our student athletes. What I really thrived on during that role was the engagement with the student athletes, so I knew I always wanted to be part of the student athlete experience. About midway through my time at River Falls, I'd been there about total I've been at River Falls for 13 years, but about midway through, I got an opportunity to take on the assistant athletic director role while still doing athletic training, so I always joked I had my hand in everyone's business in those two positions. But I really started to see the value of the administrative side and how I could have a bigger impact on the student athletes rather than just a small focus on their health and well-being and kind of the big picture academics and social success, and really started to pursue that opportunity. I took a year away from River Falls and worked at a Division II conference office, and there I really saw the value of the administrative side, big picture, got to work with many athletic directors and really got to hone in on maybe how I wanted my role to be, and there I really started to put a focus on an athletic director position. I had an opportunity to come back to River Falls as the athletic director and have really enjoyed being part of the student athlete experience on a much bigger scale than maybe one area of focus.
In a previous show, I had Dr. Thomas from the University District of Columbia and Dr. Caroline Sibley, who's a sports psychologist. And one thing we talked about is that we're now on the fourth wave of athletic directors. Your first wave is sort of the football coach retires, becomes the AD. Second wave was people who became coaches, became ADs, because as Judy Rhodes told me in her interview, she was the AD at Charlotte. I didn't want my career being based on an 18-year-old's ability to make a free throw at the end of the game. And then in the third, I think it became more professional, and you have people who are studying it now. But in the fourth wave, you're sort of bringing that up early. I mean, do you think you will see people going from other areas, such as becoming athletic trainer like you did, or as lawyers like Jack Swarbrick at Notre Dame and others? So do you think the fourth wave, you're at the vanguard of that, where you see people from outside, college sports administration, but, in a related area?
I think there's definitely a less clear path to an athletic director role. Like you mentioned, it used to be just the coach retired from coaching and went into administration. But I think college presidents and chancellors and universities as a whole are seeing the value of somebody with maybe a broader skill set, somebody with a little bit of the business side of it. I think that's becoming more of a piece of it, but also somebody that really appreciates the student-athlete piece of it. Student-athletes are having so many more challenges with mental health issues, with academic issues. So somebody that can see the whole perspective, I think, is where you're seeing some of that people coming from different areas of focus into an athletic director role and bringing some good value.
Do you find your athletic trainer background helping you as an athletic director?
I think it does. One piece is I've worked with every single sport. Maybe a coach has only worked with one or two sports, and I've worked with all 17 of ours on the sidelines, in the trenches every day, and definitely understand the day in, day out process. And I think my coaches appreciate that piece, that I've been in the grind with them. As far as the student-athlete experience, I know what they deal with on a day-to-day basis, and I think I can bring some value into how I can help them achieve that balance between their physical well-being, mental well-being, and also helping them be successful on the field.
Kim, how do you see the role of the athletic director evolving and the people filling that position?
Well, I certainly do think that different backgrounds coming into an athletic director role, a non-traditional, business person or what have you, has value, absolutely. But I also think that being a coach or being an athletic trainer brings an understanding to your staff in particular, that okay, some of these days are a grind, and you know what that's like. You miss on a recruit, and you understand what that's like. You lose your best player to an injury, you understand what that's like, and you can relate and you can help them. And I think that brings value as well, and just the different relationships that you're able to build. And interesting fact is, Crystal was a student athlete at Winona State in the soccer program when I was there as the track coach, and here we both are, probably never at that time thinking, oh, we'll be working together in this capacity someday, but here we are working together in this capacity. And so you just don't always necessarily know what path it's going to be, but it all comes together.
And how do you feel your coaching background helps you out in being an athletic director?
Well, I not to be repetitive, but that understanding of what coaching is, and the wins and the losses and what that brings, and I get it. I feel for them sometimes, and I'm excited for them, and not just in a winning situation, but when they get that recruit or the player, makes a certain connection, things like that. And I really like understanding things about the dynamics of the team and the personal stories of the student athletes. I love to sit and talk with them about those kinds of things.
Do you think you'd have that ability if you had not played and coached?
Well, I think that yes, anybody could do those kinds of things, but as long as you have that caring attitude. But I just believe that it has just a little different twist to it.
So, Crystal, when I interviewed Heather Lake, who's the athletic director at the University of Pittsburgh, she said the favorite part of her job was taking the most important person in someone's life, their child, and helping them develop from, basically a teenager away from home the first time into a young adult. What's your favorite part of the job of being an athletic director?
For me, certainly it is the student-athlete experience, and knowing that I can play a role in having a great experience in developing into a great young person and moving them off into a successful career after college.
And what's your favorite part of being an athletic director?
Well, certainly the same thing that Crystal's saying, that we love when our student athletes come back and talk to us about what their experience meant to them. That's very impactful. I think in the day-to-day portion of our jobs, there's a lot of challenging things that occur, but I love the people that I am around each and every day. I have a genuine love for them, and they make me laugh, and we help each other through the hard stuff, and it just that's the people keep me coming back, and that's certainly the student athletes, but I in my role work much more closely with our staff, and they're just really good people.
So speaking of student athletes, this is kind of an ironic and timely question to ask since we're eating dinner here at an award-winning Culver's, but I taught the politics of sports at the University of Iowa. I had 3 varsity athletes in my class. And one way that I knew that Gary Barta, the athletic director there, was doing a great job was the only complaint I heard from those student athletes the whole semester was that the guacamole was not chunky enough at the University of Iowa. So what is your chunky guacamole factor where you realize, hey, if that's all they're complaining about, I'm doing a great job here at River Falls. So what's your chunky guacamole?
Oh gosh. I think I know that we're doing a good job for our student athletes. Like you said, if you don't hear complaints, if you do hear complaints about one thing or another, there's things to be working on. But
would you worry if you didn't hear complaints?
I think there may be some level of what's going on there if you're not hearing anything. But we do a great job of trying to elicit feedback from our student athletes. We do a survey at the end of every sports season just to get into their heads a little bit and understand what their experience is like.
So once you receive that survey, did that sort of work into the business plan for the next year? This is where we have to improve?
Well, I think it definitely gives me a perspective that, if I were to come and observe, I may not know how the student athletes are feeling, and it really allows me to get into their experience, and, if I see a pattern of concerns, it gives me something to talk to the coaches or the staff about, depending on what it is. But I think it gives me an idea of what are we doing really well, what are some areas that we need to focus on.
So Kim, what was your chunky guacamole moment at the University of Wisconsin?
Well, I don't know that it's one particular thing, but we also talk with our student athletes at the end of their careers. We meet face to face with our senior student athletes, and we do a survey as well. But we want that feedback. We say, tell us what we're doing well, tell us where we need to improve, because we then share that information back directly with the head coaches, because they also want to be able to improve. So are there things that we can be better at? Yes, absolutely. But it seems like when we get done with those particulars, they say things like, but I wouldn't change anything for the whole world. I'm so glad I came here, and I've had such a great experience, and I love my teammates, and I love my coaches.
But nobody ever loves their athletic director.
Well, no, they say that a little later on. And in all truthfulness, I view myself as I'm not the one who's going to make or break their experience. It's their coach. I work directly with the coaches to help them meet their needs. What do you need? What are the resources? That's who I work for, because they're the ones working day in and day out with our student athletes, and they're the ones that are going to affect that student athlete's experience. And so I'm very proud of the work that we all do collectively, but it's really the coach who is the main player in that student athlete's life.
It's interesting you mentioned all these positive interactions. When I interviewed Mark Ingram, who's the athletic director at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, he said people don't realize that being an athletic director is pretty much a 24/7 job. You've got meetings to do every night. It's just not, being in the luxury box with the heavy hitters at the stadium. What sort of meetings and things do you have to go that go past a typical 9 to 5?
Oh gosh, well, yeah, there's not necessarily a 9 to 5-ness to this job. We all know that. There's student government meetings that we need to attend for budget purposes. We have our own student athlete meetings. Our student athlete advisory committee meetings are typically going to be in the night, right? That's when they're available. We have our contests, our nights and weekends. If there are community things that we need to be a part of, whether that's being on certain boards or attending meetings, for county taxes, whatever it may be, those are all things. There's always something going on in the out of work day. Yeah.
So Crystal, what takes you past the typical 9 to 5?
I think everything that Kim said, and I think it's just part of being in this role, you want to make sure that athletics are involved in other areas on campus. So if it's attending a student senate meeting or if it's attending a chancellor's meeting, you want to make sure that athletics is a present there. So if it's a community event, so it's all the same things Kim mentioned, and I think it's important that athletics plays a role in community advisory committees, other campus advisory committees, just to show that we're good partners on campus and in the community.
You know, my class at the University of Iowa was packed with students who all wanted to be athletic directors. Do you see more and more students at the University of Wisconsin-River Falls who want to become athletic directors?
I've always had students that express an interest. I don't know if it's more or less, over the last 12 or 13 years. But every year we get a handful that do want to know more about it, and we talk about the different ways that they could get into it. Again, we talked earlier that there's maybe no set path anymore, but we talk about what their interests are. Is it high school level? Is it college level? Is it something bigger than Division III? And I try and help them figure out what path would help them get to what their goals are.
You notice more and more female students and student athletes coming to you and saying, how do I become an athletic director?
Again, I don't know if it's more or less females. I've always had females, and maybe it's because I've been active as an administrator and also involved with student athletes, and they feel comfortable asking me those questions. But I don't know if it's increased in the number. There just always has been a number of females that are interested.
Can you see more and more students interested in becoming student athletes?
Well, at Lacrosse we have an interesting situation in that we have an undergraduate major in sport management, and so we have a fairly constant stream of students who are interested in the sport field.
Do you see more females who want to go into sports management and become an athletic director?
I don't. When we go and speak in some of the sport management classes, I do, kind of survey the audience, and there's always more males than females, and I understand that. That's not atypical. But we have many students at Lacrosse who are interested in the sporting field, whether that be collegiate athletics. A lot of them oftentimes say, I'm going to be in pro sports, and that's great, and that's exciting for them, but they definitely have the interest, and I think the ones that get involved in our programs, working a football game or helping out with a name your event, I think that we pick up more of a genuine interest from those students than the general, I'm going to be in a sports field.
Yeah.
So Ernst & Young, they did a study that found out that 80% of C-level female executives played sports in high school and college. In social media this week, they were saying this was the election in which Title IX won. So many females who were elected to office had played sports. What do you think the impact of Title IX has been on college life overall?
Well, we know, based on simple data, that certainly the opportunities for females have increased because of Title IX. We know that that's happened. We've come a long way, certainly, based on that legislation. I think there's certainly room for continued improvement in that area.
So what do you think the impact of Title IX has been on college sports overall?
I agree with Kim, and as an institution, we're adding, or we are starting a new program this year. Women's lacrosse will be our first year hosting them as a varsity sport. And when I was in college, I played college soccer, and the program was only in its third year when I was in college. So definitely have seen how the changes have happened, and certainly more opportunities for girls in high school and into college to participate, and certainly enjoy providing them those opportunities.
So in terms of opportunities at your school, how do you detect that someone has the passion that they need to work at a WIAC school, that they are the right fit? What do you look for in the hiring process?
Well, I think for me, we talk a lot about what our internal culture is. We talk a lot about the Division III philosophy. Again, I think it comes down to a coach wants to be at our institutions. I think whenever we're hiring a coach.
How do you tell that they want to be there, though? I mean, if they're interviewing, they're going to tell you they want to be there. They want to be there interview. But how do you detect that? This guy is a great fit here?
I think for me, they've certainly done their homework on what River Falls is, and it's not just they're chasing a head coaching position. They're looking for the head coaching position at River Falls. They've done their research on what the institution is about, what the community is about. They know where our location is, what our key programs are, and they feel that the institution as a whole is a good fit for them, the community is a good fit for them, not just necessarily this head coaching position or this staff position. So those are the things that I'm looking for, somebody that is truly interested in us as a campus. And I think that resonates into, they want to be part of the WIC because it's competitive. And I think most coaches going into the profession want to be part of the competitive program.
And so how do you detect that passion when you're interviewing a person for a coaching or administrative position?
Well, certainly there's just the nuts and bolts of coaching. Do have had experience with that sport. We certainly look for a level of success in the sport and the coaching world. We would like to see that they, at least in our opinion, have the ability to inspire student athletes, because you can know a lot about a sport, but you can inspire the student to get the most out of them and get them all working in the same direction. It's not going to work, but much like Crystal's talking about at River Falls, we have our culture at UW Lacrosse, and if Crystal asked me to, hey, can you help me pick this hockey coach, I would say no, and she would do the same, because it's her institution and her culture that I don't necessarily understand, and we have our institution and our culture, and I think very specific things that you can learn from an interview process, but there's also just the intangibles that sometimes it's you bring in part of that gut feeling as well, and that I think that there's something to that.
Let's focus on culture since you brought that up. When I was in graduate school, the thing that I really developed a passion for was good college hockey. I mean, there is nothing better. A rivalry is brewing south at Arizona State. They have a huge hockey rivalry there. So did that surprise you to see college hockey? More and more people starting to appreciate it, even down where it's sunny 363 days out of the year.
Well, I'm going to turn that one over to Crystal.
Okay.
We are a hockey-less institution, but I know Crystal has a lot of hockey knowledge.
Well, I think for me, hockey is still an expanding sport, so the fact that there's a rivalry brewing in Arizona isn't overly surprising. I know Arizona State has made the leap to Division I. Arizona is still in the ACHA, so maybe that rivalry will get lost a little bit along the way, but I think we have those same competitive rivalries here in our state. If we're talking specifically about hockey, we certainly have our WIC hockey programs that have great rivalries. We know they're among the best programs in the country, so when we compete against our conference schools, we're going to see that rivalry, and it's great that it's just down the highway that we have these great rivalries.
So Kim, let me ask you a question, and you can't be like Garrison Keillor and say all the sports are above average at University of Wisconsin Lacrosse. If I was to go to graduate school there, what sport would I come out madly in love with that I never would have thought of before coming from the East Coast?
I don't know that I can follow your rule of I can't not pick one. We have a tradition with our institution with sports of our track and field, cross country, that have had a lot of success, but I certainly can't say that there's more interest in that sport just because of the success we have. One of the strengths that I feel about our institution is we're very strong across the board and working to make sure that all of our sports are advancing. And that's not particular to Wisconsin Lacrosse, but we talked about that as a staff as well. So if folks are watching this and know that I am a track person, they might say, "Oh, that's not fair." But
So Crystal, why lacrosse? When you think about lacrosse, you think it's primarily an East Coast sport. Ohio State played in the championship game 2 years ago. Denver won the championship years ago, and Utah has its first game. But what made you guys select lacrosse?
I think for us it came down to fit. We talked a lot about fit with coaches and staff and student athletes, and for us, the Twin Cities area is really a hotbed for girls lacrosse and high school lacrosse in general, and it's really grown over the last 10 years. It's starting to expand to the Midwest. There's, at the Division III level, there is a lacrosse-only league that comprises of eastern part of Wisconsin and down into Iowa and Illinois. So it's starting to expand west, and I think for us, again, it came down to a good fit. can draw a lot of students from the Twin Cities area, which I think will be a great fit for us institutionally and also athletically. We found a great coach just over in the Twin Cities area too that has been a great fit for us. So it all came down to fit and what would be great for our institution, what would be good for our athletic programs, and women's lacrosse was just that fit for us.
So let's bring it down to the last question here. A good friend of mine coaches college baseball in the South. I'm not going to say the school, but he says he loves to get baseball players from New England, believe it or not, because they don't have tired arms. You know, they didn't grow up in Arizona or California or Florida. You know, by the time they get there, they've been sort of, already had Tommy John surgery. So what's an advantage of a Wisconsin athlete has over others?
Well, I think certainly that Midwest work ethic is very prevalent throughout the WIC institutions. We have just a bunch of good, hardworking young men and women who've been in situations that just they just know how to work through it, how to accept those challenges that take them on.
So what do you see the advantages of recruiting athletes from Wisconsin and the Midwest over?
Well, I think it's the same thing that Kim mentioned. When our coaches are out recruiting, they know Wisconsin is a hotbed for other states, other coaches to come in and look for athletes, and I think it's that work ethic. They know that they have to grind through the snow when they're playing football and soccer outside and have to deal with those types of challenges, but I think it comes down to the work ethic, the values that we have in the upper Midwest, and I think coaches from other areas find that very attractive.
Well, I want to thank both of you for joining us, and I want to thank Culver's for hosting this episode of Appetizer and Dinner with the Athletic Director, or A&D with the AD. And so to sign off, as they say in Wisconsin this time of year, watch out for deer. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.